So, Matt, thank you for joining us on today's episode. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to anybody that is unfamiliar with who you are or the company that you work with?
For sure. Hey, Justin. Hey, Fernando. Really
Right.
glad to be here today. Thanks for having me on. My name is Matt Mitchell. I am the Director of Business Development and Partnerships for Sleep Me. Sleep Me is part of Chili Sleep. Chili Sleep being the brand namesake for all of our temperature-regulated sleep technologies. And then Sleep Me is really the future of our company, and that's coaching platforms, SaaS, and various other aspects of sleep delivery to consumers. That's going to really be kind of the future of our company for years from now. So I'm responsible for our team partnerships, team programs, whether it's professional sports of all stripes. We work with 6 different professional sports leagues globally, or Division I college athletics. And then also beyond that, it's our retail business. Our primary business is e-commerce, direct to consumer, but we also have a smaller but fast growing retail business, which I also oversee.
How did you get into that company and working with them?
Yeah, so I've been here almost 3 years. I came in the summer of 2019 to be the director of marketing, overseeing all aspects of integrated marketing within the company. I believe I was employee number 18 or 19 at the time. And fast forward 3 years, we've got well over 110 employees.
Oh, wow.
Many of them full-time remote folks, but many of them actually do work at our headquarters, which is just north of Charlotte, North Carolina. So the company's grown a ton. We were on the Inc. 5000 list a couple of years ago, based on a growth rate of over 700% over 4 years. So the company's been doing a lot the last few years, and it's been fun to be part of that journey.
That's awesome. As you talked about the future, what do you see for you guys, the immediate integration with sport? How you said you've been there for 3 years. So, all right, in 3 years, you guys plan to be here, and then 6 years, like what's kind of your vision as you grow it?
Sure. So we've been selling into the sports and performance space for a long time, but ironically, we haven't really been focused on it as a strategic priority for probably about 18 months or so. So we've been selling into teams, but we were really taking orders, but we weren't really outbound focused on those aspects of the business until, again, early, or I would say mid 2020. So it's probably been about 2 years. And really that was born out of a few things, but one of the most notable things was COVID, right? During the lockdowns of 2020, there were lots of sports entities, teams, particularly in the NBA, that actually were reaching out to us, getting ready to go into the bubble in Orlando in late 2020 when the season got going again. And they said, hey, we need a lot of help with sleep. Our recovery is all over the place right now. Guys have been trying to work out at home. Now we're getting ready to go to Orlando. Can you guys help? And so we sent units to lots of different teams that were based in Orlando. And that really kind of put us on the map in some respects, particularly in the NBA. And then it kind of snowballed from there. And pretty soon we were working on training camp programs with Division I college football teams, NFL teams, and then we actually rolled out some pretty big programs with Major League Baseball last year, most notably with the Cincinnati Reds and the Seattle Mariners, really putting forward comprehensive programs that involved our sleep technologies that are temperature regulated primarily, but also getting into some of those new areas like sleep coaching and some of those service aspects of our business. So, sports and performance is now a mainstay part of our business, and it makes sense because we know that there's a problem as it relates to sleep for athletes, right? The Journal of Strength Conditioning Research actually estimates that 50% of college athletes have clinically significant sleep issues, and we know we can help with that.
So talking about that, I've taken your guys' course as you sent it to me, and one of the things clinically talking about that I just hadn't heard before. I've read Matthew Walker's book, and I've had other people on the topic of sleep. It's always been not necessarily 8 is the hard steady fast, but like, hey, there's certain hours that you need as you get older, and it does get a little bit shorter when you're, our age, and then it gets back up. You need more sleep. And when you're really young, you need more sleep. But your company was one of the first. And when I believe her name, Trisha, right?
Tara Youngblood, our CEO.
Tara,
Yeah.
sorry, Tara. I had
And
the
the
name.
and the author of our
Yep.
sleep coaching curriculum. Yep.
Yep. So when you guys put out, hey, as long as you're getting 6 and 4 of deep sleep, talk a little bit more about that research and just your guys' philosophy there of like, hey, quality is going to matter of what you're getting. And then
Yeah.
how are you guys going to then start to help track it too?
Yeah, great. So yeah, and to kind of move back a little bit for your listeners, we did launch a sleep coaching course 6 to 9 months ago, and this is a 30 module, 12 continuing education credit worth of credit sleep course that's available at sleep.me. So anybody that wants to go check that out, they can do that. But yeah, our whole thing is we want to be mindful of the individual, the sort of N equals 1. Acknowledging that in many situations, especially with the highly conditioned athlete, they can't get the 8 or 9 hours every night. It'd be great if they could, but it's just not realistic when you think about the training schedules, the competition schedules. Lots of these athletes are playing night games, the circadian disruption, right? The time on the bus, the time on the jet, all of the associated issues there with travel. So what's really helped us break through with this community is our unique approach, which is we're not going to just pay you lip service and tell you you got to get your 8 or 9 hours. If you don't, you're in for it. We don't do that, right? We want to be adaptable. And so one of the cool things about our approach, our services, our temperature regulated sleep tech is we can really hack one's sleep, right? And what we mean by that is if you can only get 6.5 hours of sleep, well, by using temperature appropriately to fall asleep faster, so improving on what's called latency, falling asleep quickly, staying asleep, so avoiding some of those restlessness issues or wake ups during the night that are associated with lots of different things, namely temperature is a big one. We can help the individual get more deep sleep and more REM sleep, which are the sort of highest value stages of sleep, thereby minimizing some of that light sleep stage. So yeah, you fast forward 6.5 hours of duration, but 3.5 to 4 hours of deep and REM, that's a really great night of sleep.
For someone that does not sleep well and has not done for a while, you got me hooked.
Bro, okay, so now's my time.
I am ready to go.
So now it's my turn to say, I'm completely biased. I bought the product back in August of COVID. I think I heard it on one of Wadango's podcast where one of the guys he had on said he bought it, and I'm like, you know what? Let me just look into this. And I bought the Chili Pad, the original one, and then most recently I upgraded to the Dock Pro, and I literally have no idea how the Dock Pro is that much colder than the Chili Pad. I don't know how that happened, but it is. And I mean, I've said it to some of my colleagues, so the head ATC that I work with, he bought one. My former assistant, he bought one. My mother-in-law, when they stayed at our house, she tried it, and she was waking up from hot flashes. She got so again, I'm telling you, man, this thing's legit. So how in the hell does it stay that cold? Seriously, it's unbelievable.
No, and Justin, can't thank you enough for the support. I know you've been an advocate for a long time, and we've been working with a lot of your peers and team at Towson, so that's been awesome. So yeah, what Justin's referring to is our original cube system, which is affectionately referred to as the Chili Pad, or what we call internally, it's our OG sleep system. And so, that system, along with our 2 other mattress topper systems, which are now headlined by the new Dock Pro, which I'll get into, they're really all built on a pretty common premise, which is utilizing water to actively cool the surface of your bed or heat the surface of your bed if you like to do that. All of the systems have a temperature range of 55 to 115 degrees. But for lots of highly conditioned athletes, the colder the better, right? So the Cube is our original system. We're on I believe it's our 4th generation of Cube. So it's been around a while, and we've been able to kind of iterate on it with the engineering. But it's a great product, right? It's remote control operated. Super simple. A lot of our college athletes actually love that product because it's simple to use and figure out. And then we started to add some of those more tech forward enhancements a few years ago with a product called the Uller. The Uller did very well. It was right after it came out, it began to oversell what the Cube ever did, because it introduced a really neat feature in adding scheduling capability, which means you could actually, by way of the app, which actually served as a remote control, the app was Bluetooth connected, and it allowed the user to actually set a bedtime, set a wake time, and then vary the schedule throughout the night. And so what that meant was it was one less thing for a busy individual to have to remember to do. They didn't have to turn something on, turn something off. It was turned on for you. And so I talked about sleep latency a few minutes ago. That's one of the key areas where we can really help an athlete. If you can get into a cold bed, it's a really nice thing. It really does some magical stuff in terms of setting a sleep switch off in your brain so that you can fall asleep faster, right? But then what you can do is actually vary those temperatures hour by hour so that in the tail end of your night, so call it, your 5th, 6th hour of sleep, you can actually begin to warm your bed surface up. And that's preparing you for wake up. So it's a much more peaceful, less jarring way to wake up. And we even have a feature called Warm Awake, which is a really neat feature. So you don't have to use your alarm clock anymore.
I got mine set with that. Like, seriously, if I set it, so I have it set to, it goes off like 5 minutes beforehand. I'm like, oh, I'm starting to be warm. But then it goes off and you're like, shit, I want to get out of bed. It's warm. Like
the closest I got to that without no technology was just having like really cold showers before going to bed. But that got really inconvenient now that's winter over here in Argentina. I was like, can't do this. And then I get like a mildly hot shower. I feel like I can't sleep. It's just like, I feel my pulse in my ears. I should probably
that's one of the things you guys talked about in your sleep course was like kind of your, what'd you guys call it? Your pre-bedtime bucket. Like what are the things that you're doing, before you go to bed, to continue to help you with that latency?
Exactly. You nailed it. So it's all in kind of that thermal regulation in that microclimate, which is your bed and kind of under the sheets. And it's really strongly linked to some physiological processes that are associated with sleep. And these are really going to influence your ability to fall asleep. And so typically when you can vary that core body temperature 1 to 2 degrees, typically we see a lot of people prefer that cold path, 1 to 2 degrees colder than that ambient air temperature. But some actually like to get into a warm bed. The key is, it doesn't really matter which path they choose, colder or warmer. The key is it needs to be a variable temperature from what that ambient is, right? So if you're in a room that's 72, you want to get into a warm bed that's 76 or higher typically, or 68 or lower, right? And what that's going to do is through that natural physiological process, it's going to help you fall asleep faster, right? And then you let the magic of temperature take over. And after you've fallen asleep, what we suggest is that you get as cold as you can in that first half of your night's sleep without being so cold that you've awakened shivering. Obviously, that would be bad. That would be too far.
So that's happened to me, and that's like everybody, they're like, oh, this isn't going to be cold enough. I mean, I did it, and I woke up, I was like, all right, I'm freezing. Like,
yeah.
And then
so
it's, you guys say what,
days.
like, you're like, all right, you go up 1 degree every time. So that way you can try to figure it out, right?
Exactly. Yeah. That's always a good strategy, is to sort of use the first few nights to guess what's going to be optimal. Starting with something that you think you can tolerate and going colder from there until you've reached that point where you're waking up too cold, and then you can dial it back after that. But that's a really great way to start. Again, it only takes you 3 or 4 nights to dial things in. But what's really neat is, with the advent of all these wearables that are tracking sleep, now we sort of have that real world validation to be able to show the individual, hey, look, you have a sort of baseline, pre-intervention sleep score, if you will. And then you've got that post-intervention sleep score. And very, very often, I don't want to say every time, but pretty close, the user is going to see improvements in things like HRV, heart rate variability rising, seeing latency go down, so falling asleep faster, seeing things like deep sleep getting bigger, getting longer, increasing, as well as REM sleep. So those are those high value measurements that really matter when it comes to human performance and recovery. And again, it's an outcome that can be easily measured. And then what also can happen is in working with teams, like for instance, working with Santa Clara's women's soccer team last fall, they were the national champs 2 years ago in the College Cup. 85% of their players saw an improvement in sleep quality. And so that was actually measured through the ASSQ, the athlete sleep screening questionnaire.
Yep,
and so, Gotcha. It's important to use both, right? The trackers, the wearables, but then also those questionnaires.
When you mentioned that team, that's going to be a question that I have for you. For any of our listeners out there whose team are using it and they're trying to figure out the logistics, what would be kind of some of the things that you would say are the best way to use it if you're a team traveling on the road, the logistics, or if you're a team and you gave it to the athletes and they have it at home? What are some of the best logistics and cleaning tips or use tips? Yeah,
that's great. So this product works best. It works fine at home and it works great on the road too. And we have situations where folks do take it on the road. But I think the primary focus should be on that dorm room, that off-campus apartment, that kind of home environment, really optimizing that and setting up the bedroom environment for their primary residence is not hard. Justin, you know this from having set up a few systems. Probably takes 10 minutes tops. Probably the longest, the item that takes the long, or the part that takes the longest is just filling up the water, finding a water pitcher to fill up the water. Doesn't take too long. So it's about 10 minutes. And all you're doing with the product is it's a mattress topper that you're putting under your fitted sheet above your mattress. So you're taking the fitted sheet off, you're putting this pad on. It's going to fit any bed size, any bed type. Even if anybody has an adjustable bed, they work on those too. But they're offered in all the common sizes. So if you have an individual in a dorm that maybe has a twin XL bed, we have that size. It can also cover half a bed or a full bed. So once it's set up, once it's programmed by way of the app, then the individual is off and running. So that kind of takes care of the home environment. And then for the on the road environment, in fact, the Reds, we created a special travel case for the Reds so that they could take these on the road. So they were actually doing both. They had the at-home solution and the on-the-road solution. But we know not every team has the space that a professional sports team does, who's chartering planes and whatnot. So it's all kind of conditional based on how a team travels. Whether it's the bus or the plane and how big the roster is. So what we've seen happen, Justin, is teams will sort of separate their roster a bit, and they'll say, hey, the starters are going to travel with the system, but then maybe the full roster is going to have it for the at-home environment. So I've seen it done lots of different ways, but the sort of variables to consider, of course, are budget, and then also just the space constraints that exist. Sometimes there's budget dollars, but there's not space.
Have you guys thought about partnering with any hotels to be able to say like, hey, this hotel has the chili? Because I mean, for me personally too, it's like, damn, I ain't got my chili pad when I stay at this hotel. Like,
no, it's a great call out. We actually have some hotel partners all over the world. Actually, I was in London 3 weeks ago for a health conference, and it was kind of neat. We were able to stay at the Pan Pacific, who actually uses our product. They have our product on their health wellness floor. There's like 10 special rooms for wellness, and we were able to enjoy some of those. But no, here in the States, we've done several pilots with some key hotels. Yeah. With great success, whether it was the Moxie down in Atlanta or the Ritz-Carlton up in Cleveland. We did a neat partnership with them and the Cleveland Cavs when they were doing a mini bubble in September of 2020. Kind of going back to that COVID experience, the bubble of Orlando was so successful and well done that the teams that weren't part of the official bubble, there were 8 teams that did their own mini bubbles in hotels. That's actually where they did their workouts.
Yep.
And 3 of the 8 teams actually partnered with us in the local hotel to have their whole team set up. And one of them was the Golden State Warriors, who just won the NBA title. And so that was
So
2 years
getting
ago.
a chili pad will help you win a national NBA championship. You
It's
heard it here.
science.
You
It's
heard it
science.
here first.
We did work with 3 different national championship teams in the last year. So there is something to this idea that the winners sleep better, right? When you think about, what are the recovery tools that matter? Sleep is one that is always at the top of the list, but sometimes, folks need a little help optimizing their current approach to getting better at sleep. And that's where we can help.
How much of the stuff is, like you said, coaching it versus, helping them get the different products, whether it's the mattress toppers or the blankets or the pillows that you guys have? How much of you guys' time is split up between doing all those?
Yeah. So when you can combine it all into one program that's comprehensive, you're going to see the best outcomes. Anytime you can kind of augment the temperature regulated tech with some coaching, whether it's group, sort of CEU curriculum based, Justin, like I know you have some familiarity with, or even one-on-one, we can attack it in any flavor a team wants to employ, and that's going to work the best. Because what we've found, like I'll use the Reds as an example, they've got our coaching with the tech, right? So they're able to give a text, a number that the players or the staff can text, which is our sleep coaching line, to be able to weigh in on matters, both kind of rote or a little bit more serious, right? Like that whole spectrum we can address. Sometimes it's troubleshooting how to use the product. Sometimes it's FAQ based around, hey, how do I put water in this unit, or what's the best temperature for muscle recovery, or things like that. Or it might be something else that needs to be referred to a specialist within the staff. It works best when you can do both, but what we see happen most commonly is people have an individual on a roster who might really be struggling with their sleep. I can give you a ton of examples of where this happened, where we fixed one person's sleep who was the individual that really was struggling. This is an individual. I'll use an example. I won't name the team, but I'll name the sport. It was an All-American softball pitcher who was a world-class pitcher, tons of accolades, but was only sleeping 5 hours a night 2 seasons ago. And we got her in a chili pad in the off season. I think this was in November of last year. And then she immediately was getting 7+ hours of sleep a night. I mean, that's game-changing stuff when you can improve 2 hours of sleep like that. So that got her into that zone of that optimal zone of duration, right? Because anytime you're under 6 hours, that's not optimal. So we got her from 5 to 7 just with one intervention like ours, and then that was able to help us snowball into full roster programs.
For those that kind of want to nerd out on this now, like kind of talk, like, yeah, any of our listeners that are like, okay, hey, like I really love this stuff, talk about it a little bit, not going too deep down the rabbit hole, but like you just said, essentially give the talk that you wouldn't give to the athletes because you don't want to, they're not going to want to hear it, but for our listeners out there that are super interested in it.
Sure. So like we talked, I mean, the problem is an insufficient sleep for athletes, right? It's not dissimilar to the problem that we have as a society at large, where something like 2/3 of individuals aren't getting the recommended quality or quantity of sleep that's recommended by the CDC. So, kind of building on that, why does that matter to an athlete? Like, why should they sort of not tune out when the coach is talking about sleep? It's got adverse effects, right? Sleep loss has adverse effects that are apparent quite quickly, right? Even within 24 hours. And that might be cognitive, or it might be physical, right? It might be, difficulty concentrating, at practice or in class in a college context. It might be poor recall or impaired judgment, during the game. So those are sort of semi-obvious, right? I think we all kind of know that. But bigger picture, right? It can lead to injury, the prevalence of injury, and it can also, if you're not sleeping well, lead to limited career longevity, which matters greatly to these athletes that are trying to play as long as they can. So that's why sort of that sleep topic is so critical. And then, how do we help that? We help that with a real wholesale approach to sleep quality that's built on things beyond just temperature regulation, but also some of those other aspects like the service side of it, which is coaching and some of these content tools that are becoming available through Sleep Me, which is going to be launching officially in September. And one of the things we're really excited about with Sleep Me is our Sleep Me Plus membership, which will actually be headlined by a sleep tracker, which is going to be coming out in September. And this is a on the bed, so under the mattress topper, above the mattress, so non-wearable sleep tracker. It's less than 1 millimeter thick, and it offers medical grade accuracy for things like sleep staging, respiratory rate, HRV, resting heart rate. All of those key measurables that we talk about a lot will actually be found in our tracker. So come September, we'll have the intervention, the leading interventions that we've been doing for a long time with that on bed tracker to allow for that real world sleep tracking to assess the quality.
So this is going above the mattress pad, and then you put the sheet on it, and then it's boom.
It'll go above the mattress, below the mattress pad,
below the mattress pad.
So you won't even feel it. So
yeah, because
it'll
you're
go
already
under your chili pad.
Under the actual, so you're still laying on top of the Doc Pro or whatever you got, not on top of the mat.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and because they were all built, from the ground up by us, they were made to work together. In fact, they work amazingly well together, which means you don't have to sort of choose, do I want to be able to track or do I want to have a cold mattress topper? You can actually have both. And so we're super excited about what Sleep Me Plus membership with that tracker will be able to do for us, here in the next 3 months, which is right around the corner.
What would you say? What do you guys say to somebody that's like, hey, this thing's saying I didn't get a lot of deep sleep, but I actually slept great. But they're like, hey, I just I thrash around when I'm in deep sleep. And this thing's saying because I'm moving, I'm not in deep sleep. What do you guys say to them as an education piece?
Yeah, so trackers are there's so many of them, right? And the accuracy piece is critical. And so what we've done is we've done our testing against that PSG standard, which is effectively like a sleep lab standard.
Yeah, I was about to say, you're gonna have to tell me what PSG stands for.
Yeah, I would have to tap my product peers to remember what that stood for. But the gotcha. PSG standard, that's where you're all hooked up with all the sensors all over your head and body. And so that's obviously the gold standard in terms of accuracy. And we can get not right to that point, but pretty close. And we're very proud of how we stack up against the other wearables on the market today. But I'll say this, right? That they're data points. They're not perfect. So there will always be those situations where you look at your sleep score and it may be great and you don't feel great, or it may be bad and you feel great, right? So that's why I think really important to pair the sort of quantitative with the qualitative, so that you're checking in on an athlete beyond just what the number says, the morning after.
How about to any of the athletes or any of the clients that are overly looking at that stuff and they become obsessed? What are some of the kind of guidelines that you're using with anybody during the trial or during the pilot that you've been doing with it? Like, hey, don't get too hung up on it. Yes, but don't let it ruin or run your life.
Yeah, that's a great question. With the positive experiences we've had with some of these leading championship level teams, they check in frequently, but not too often. And so what I mean by that is there's typically a preseason assessment, a mid-season assessment, and then a postseason assessment. So they sometimes suggest the athlete not even look at those scores on a daily or even weekly basis, but it's something that's done less frequently, like every 30 to 45 days based on the season schedule. So we've seen that done certainly on the Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index screener and the ASSQ screener that I mentioned. Yep. It's not something that makes sense to do on a daily basis. Some might choose to do that, and that's fine. But the check-ins at the right intervals seems to work really well for the teams that we've seen success with.
The Pittsburgh one, that's the one that you just do pre and post like intervention. Say if it's like a 12 week, that's the one that you guys use. And then the ASQ, that one is on the daily. Is that how you guys did it? Or
that we actually hired a director of applied sleep science in January. So that's her expertise, Justin.
Gotcha.
So we could definitely answer some of the questions and follow up to just parse, which one does which.
No, and
But I know
I'm
those
trying
are
to
the two
remember
screeners
too.
we usually use.
I'm trying to remember because we used both of those studies, both of those questionnaires in a research study that I was or have been conducting since 2021. And I'm just trying to remember it myself too.
Yeah.
What would be some of the big sleep bucket, as you guys call it? What are the most important things for people to start to do in addition to having this product and the ability to temperature regulate? But like you said, if you can not only have your bed at a proper temperature, okay, now what are some other things that you guys are clinically based on best practice and on the research are saying, hey, these are some things that you guys now need to start doing as well?
No, that's a great question. And, temperature is great, but it's not the whole deal. There are other tiny habits, we call them, that lead up to really good sleep quality, and they're sleep hygiene pieces that are really critical. So watching the intake of things like caffeine, alcohol close to bed, even eating your meals too close to bed, that can have a deleterious impact on sleep latency, also on things like resting heart rate. I don't know if you guys track your sleep, but on the nights that I eat late, I always notice that my heart rate cannot get down to kind of baseline until the second half of the night because I'm busy digesting. So those are big ones. The other big one is blue light management. It's hard to get away from the blue light in our homes, whether it's in the form of our preferred devices, our laptops, our phones, our tablets, but also it's emanating from a lot of the can light bulbs in our houses or in our apartments, right? It's hard to get away from. So there's ways to mitigate that. Some people like to use blue light blocking glasses, or just change out their light fixtures and try to go to a warmer, hate to say it, but a more incandescent style light, which emanates less blue light. I'll tell you this: we actually created some travel sleep kits last year in partnership with some pro baseball teams. And these are specifically designed around the sleep hygiene elements that people need to consider when they're getting ready for bed, especially in a hotel context. Because it's one thing to optimize your home environment, but if Towson's on the road, they're playing a team who has a hotel partnership that's maybe in the middle of a city. There might be honking cars outside. There might be city lights that are emanating through the window curtains. Those are annoying things that make it really difficult to fall asleep. So we actually created various products all in a convenient kit bag to help manage those things. So it's curtain clips to keep those window curtains perfectly shut. It's blue light blocking glasses, earplugs. We even included lavender pillow spray. And the idea there is if you're using that pillow spray all the time, even at home, that becomes one of those sensory cues that the individual knows indicates it's time for bed. So you can use that at home and you can use that on the road. So those are some of those little things that we're doing to manage things beyond temperature, right? It's light, it's sound, it's sensory. And then we talked about some of those habitual pieces around, nutrition and optimizing, when you're eating, when you're drinking. Those are all things that when done in a consistent way can really help lead to some positive sleep outcomes.
Do you guys do anything on the flip side, education wise, of talking to people about, okay, hey, this is your pre-bedtime bucket list. Now in the morning, these are some things that you should be doing to continue to help your circadian rhythm stay as normal as possible?
For sure. One of the things that's most exciting about Sleep Me Plus, which is going to be coming in the next few months, is it's very personalized. So there's personalized sleep training. So those educational resources and training guides that are really optimized for that individual based on kind of what their needs are. It's back to sort of that N=1 sort of mindset. So it's tailored. It's how to incorporate mindfulness, breath work exercises, even things like yoga nidra, and how to exercise in an optimal way to manage your sleep quality. That's sort of back to where we're going as a company with Sleep Me as really the engine. The personalization is going to help an individual who supports Sleep Me Plus basically realize even more benefits that are sort of useful for them to get even better at sleep. Because let's face it, sleep is hard for a lot of people, and our vision is to make it more accessible to more people. And Sleep Me Plus, with those SaaS kind of app-based tips and content, is going to help them do that.
What do you think's been the hardest thing for you guys as a company, or even people, not only just you guys as a company, but trying to get people to want to sleep more and think that it's cooler? What has been the biggest barrier that you guys have had to jump over? And then what are some kind of tips to help other coaches, right? Like our members and our audience are strength coaches, right? They're trying to help their athletes. What are some things that you can try to help them get their athletes to want to do this?
Yeah. So sometimes I think people don't know where to start and how to start. You know, we created the category of temperature regulated sleep technology. You know, when our founders, Todd and Terry Youngblood, invented the Chili Pad back in 2007, and by the way, they still operate the company to this day. You know, they created something that had never existed before. So fast forward 15 years, and I'm still having conversations every week with new teams, new coaches who are learning about our tech for the first time. And so what that means is, as they think about their budgets and they think about rollout, and they think about all the various stakeholders that exist within an organization, be it a university or a pro sports team, sometimes they don't know how to start. And so I think what's very helpful is we've got a long roster at this point of various partners, you know, over 60 different professional sports teams we're working with. It's about 25 different Division I colleges at this point. Again, none of those two partners has the same program, right? So one of the ways that we can really be effective is through customized approaches. So we can do a full roster over here. We can do, you know, the starting 5 over here. We can do one individual over here, right? And those all look and feel a little differently based on, hey, this team wants Doc Pro, this team wants cubes, they want to start small, they don't have a lot of budget. We are also offering leases. So for schools who don't want to make that investment in a one-time purchase and hold on to the products, we can lease them to a team. That way they can get the tech on the beds of their key athletes for that sort of 4 or 5 month, 6 month season window, pre and post season included. And then if they don't have any way to store them and they're conscious of graduations or transfers or what have you, they can just send them on back to us. They don't have to fool with holding on to it and maintaining them. So I
now within that, sorry to interrupt you, within that leasing system, did you ever have any success stories of programs where they did a pilot study and they leased it for 6 months and they were able to then say, hey, you know, the athletes got hooked, then because the athletes got hooked, the coaches got hooked, and then they're able to talk to administration like, hey, look, I know you guys think it's not that important, but here are the athletes and the coaches and the strength coaches saying we should do it.
Yeah, so great question. And I think the Santa Clara example is probably the best one. Working with Ryan and Jay over at Santa Clara, you know, we started with the women's soccer team this fall, and based on that very positive experience that they had, we're getting ready to expand to other teams for fiscal year 23. Gotcha. So that's sort of a good example of where we won with one notable team that had big ambition, right? They had just won the national title. They were looking for some of those off-field recovery programs, because they were very focused on the field solutions. They looked at our tech as an ideal off the field recovery tool that was well validated last fall, and now it'll expand into other teams.
Any of our listeners out there that might be asking themselves, with this Doc Pro and with this integration of a sleep app, is there going to be a way for it to integrate with any of those team AMS systems out there?
That's definitely the desire, right? We know that we can unlock a lot of value for listeners looking for that dashboard view, to have everything in one view, including sleep quality, to really drive some of those workout choices, the day after. That is absolutely the goal, Justin. And what we're going to do is we're going to try to be the very best partner to work with on the API integration side of things, so that we can be that sort of tool, that sleep tool that you coaches could really use. And so we're excited to have those conversations. Those conversations have just begun, and through the rest of the summer months and into the early fall, we're excited to see where that thing goes.
Yeah, no, and that makes sense too, because not only just to, not adjust training, but with all those AMS and all those dashboards, if you're asking the athletes, like you said, let's get some quantitative and qualitative data. Now you get the quantitative data from it. It's up on your dashboard, and you get your wellness questionnaires that the athletes fill out when they wake up, and you can try to overlay it, and then, have your discussions with athletes like, hey, you said X, Y, and Z, here's your data. And like you said, this is the trend over time with what you've said and what your data has shown over time.
Absolutely. And we know that we could tell a great story on the recovery metrics. We already talked through what those are, right? We know what those are. But if we can then close the loop in an on-field, on-court, on-ice sort of performance application, we know that that's truly game-changing, and that ultimately is going to help us be able to justify the value of our tech, right? I think people understand the value of the tech for the most part, but I think if we can close that loop and say, hey, look, when individuals sleep at this level, they can play deeper into the fourth quarter, they can reduce some of those soft tissue injuries, they can do all these positive things that are more sort of practical and in view for a lot of coaches. I think that'll really help us break through even more.
I 100% agree. Matt, I really want to thank you for your time. Is there anything that you want to leave our listeners with, or something that you're like, hey, we didn't mention this, but I really want to talk about it?
Yeah. So, well, thank you for the time, guys. This was a blast. And again, really appreciate the ongoing support. We kind of went through this, but just want to reiterate that our programs are customizable. We can offer purchase solutions, lease solutions for teams of any size. So we'd love to help anybody out there who's looking for help in the way of temperature regulated tech. We also, want to kind of point out that this equipment can be transferred from player to player. So, because we are able to launder these pads, they can be kind of turned back into the team and then reissued to athletes for the upcoming season. So they do have a nice long shelf life in that regard. We talked a little bit about coaching, sleep coaching. If you want to learn more about that or any of these service offerings, you can just go to sleep.me. No .com, it's just sleep.me to learn more about that curriculum and how we can deploy that. And again, I'm easy to reach. You can find me on LinkedIn, or you can send me a note. My email is Matthew, Mathew, @sleep.me. If you have any questions or want to talk more, I'd love to have that conversation.
That's perfect, man. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Congratulations on making it to the end of the video. Why don't you celebrate by watching more videos just like it? You can also help us on our quest to placate the algorithm gods by liking, sharing, subscribing, and commenting. Thank you.